David Carroll invited me to become a part of his collaboration where we discuss this whole concept of the black woman as God. And I believe I can add something to this conversation because I write African American fantasy fiction featuring these Egyptian gods, so I understand where a lot of these Hotep Negroes get a lot of their misinformed ideas. And I've also been a Christian for over 25 years. So I also understand the dysfunctional ideas that this Negro has regarding this black woman and his own pseudo Christian religion. And I also understand the frame of reference that many of these Afro American Negro men come from, where they talk about this whole concept of the black woman being God. Now, this frame of reference that this Afro American Negro male comes from when he says that the black woman is God is his single mother. And because in his formative years, he sees this black woman pretty much caring for his physical needs, caring for his emotional needs, and pretty much taking care of him overall, he sees this black woman as God. This black woman is the only leader and authority figure he knows. So he sees this Afro American Negro woman as God because this, again, is the only person who is the leader in his community, the only person who's an authority figure, and the only person who has ever met his needs. So that's why she's God in his eyes. And because the Afro American Negro woman is God in his eyes, he pretty much from day one is learning how to live on his knees. And he lives on his knees because he puts this black woman on a pedestal, and because he sees his mother as God, he starts to see all women as God. So in his mind, the black woman is God. Now, the rest of us who grew up with fathers in our lives or in two-parent homes, we have a more objective and balanced perspective on black women. We have an understanding of black women. And we see this Afro-American Negro woman for what she is, because it's clear to us that the Afro-American Negro woman is not God, because we look at the state of your Afro-American Negro community. Now, your Afro-American Negro community was pretty much under the leadership of your Afro-American Negro woman for the last 40 or 50 years. And if this black woman was God, you would think she would be able to make her Afro-American Negro community prosper. I mean, if this woman is supposed to be God, the black community should be a paradise. Instead, your Afro-American Negro community is one of the poorest places in all of civilized mankind. It is one of the most violent places in all of civilized mankind. But the Afro-American Negro, because he's living on his knees and looks up at his God from a pedestal, can't see how dysfunctional his community is. His God, who was in control of his black community for the last 45, 50 years, pretty much has turned it into a wasteland. If you look around at this God, again, who was the authority, who was the leader, who was the one who said that she could be responsible for this Afro-American Negro community, then why is it practically in ruins? Why is your Afro-American Negro community have the highest dropout rate, the highest unemployment rate, the highest crime rate, and the highest abortion rate? Why is the Afro-American Negro community, again, one of the worst places to live in civilization if the black woman as God is supposed to be this great creator who can pour out prosperity and blessings? And the only place we see where she pours out your prosperity and blessings is your Afro-American Negro church. And your Afro-American Negro woman, she will go to this church with this pastor where they sit there and pretend to worship and praise the living God. And they sit there and they do this saying that they love the Lord. And you look at their actions and you compare it to the very Bible that is in many of the homes of these Afro-American Negroes. And you can see that, again, your black woman, who is God, is pretty much really contradicting yourself, because how can you say that you are God and then you're going to a church to worship another God? I'm a screenwriter. I can't make up stuff that's insane, but this is perfectly logical to the Afro American Negro. And while she's going to this church and saying that she's loving the Lord, we look at her actions on Monday through Saturday, and they contradict what she does on Sunday when she sits there and praises this pseudo Christian God, really is a white man, and tells the world that she loves the Lord. Because if she really loved the living God that she reads about in her Bible, she would be participating in actions that glorify and praise Him. Now, we look at the actions of your Afro American Negro woman who says that she is a Christian, and why is it? Because the Bible says fornication is a sin. Yet your Afro American Negro woman who says she's a Christian is 73% has 73% of her babies born out of wedlock. Your Afro American Negro woman who says she's a Christian has the highest STD rate. Your Afro American Negro woman who says she's a Christian has the highest abortion rate. Your Afro American Negro woman who says she's a Christian and says that she loves everyone pretty much supports and condones most of the violence in your Afro American Negro community. Yet, this black woman who is God, again, who says that she's pouring out her blessings and her prosperity on the black community, we look at it and we look at the ruin at who she's pouring prosperity on, which is your black pastor, your foreign store owner, and your Korean hair and nail salon people, and we see who her God truly is. Because the Afro American Negro, unfortunately, because he cannot look up a little further, because he's still on his knees, he can't stand up to look up at this Negro female and see who she's worshiping. He can't see that his God has pretty much forsaken him. Because if you stand up and look this Afro American Negro woman in the eye, you see who she truly pretty much worships as her God. And her God is this white man who she deifies and praises. And the reason why she deifies and praises this white man is because this white man was the one primarily meeting her needs. This white man has pretty much been meeting her needs for, I'd say, over 100 years. But in the last 40 years, this white man has been meeting her needs through his white liberal policies and his welfare state. And these days, he's now meeting her needs at these corporate jobs. So he's pretty much been meeting the economic needs of this Afro-American Negro female, and that's why she sees him as a god. She does not see this Afro-American Negro male as any sort of leader or authority figure. Again, he has her on a pedestal, and she's looking down at this Afro-American Negro male, and she looks at him like a child, and she looks at him in a way where she pretty much pities him. And pity, what the Afro-American Negro doesn't understand, eventually evolves into contempt, because when people pity someone, they have no respect for them, and they see them as less than. But the Afro-American Negro, because again, he is deifying this black woman as God, he can't see how little regard this Afro-American Negro woman has for him in her everyday behaviors. This Afro-American Negro woman pretty much sees this Negro and looks at him and has no regard for him. She will not make him a priority. If this was a man that she respected and regarded, she would pretty much drop everything for him the same way she does when that white man on that job asks her to work overtime, or when he asks her to come into the office, or when that foreign store owner offers her a discount. She would treat him with the same respect. But no, whenever she's in the in proximity of this Afro-American Negro, she has nothing but contempt for him. She will pretty much show that in her body language by rolling her eyes at him, sucking her teeth at him, pointing daggers at him, sneering at him. But this Afro-American Negro, because he's completely clueless, he does not see these small behaviors that show how little respect this Afro-American Negro woman has for him. And he won't compare it to how this Negro woman treats her God. Now, this God, she'll sit there and she'll have a smile for him. she'll laugh with him, she'll enjoy spending time with him, and she pretty much does this right in the face of the Afro American Negro. But he thinks this woman has all but love and respect for him. He deifies this black woman as a god and sits there and tells the rest of the world, oh, I love this black woman. She's a queen. Again, coming from the reference of his relationship with his mother, which wasn't that great to begin with. Because when you look at the relationship that this Afro American Negro male had with his mother, it was a codependent relationship. The mother had all the power in the relationship, and she used that to control her son, because that's what a codependent relationship is. One person has more power in the relationship than the other. It's not a balanced and healthy relationship. But the Afro American Negro, you try to explain this to him, and he'll come at you with the shaming language. You're a coon. You're a sellout. You're an Uncle Tom. When he is the most dysfunctional individual on the planet, the rest of the world sees how little respect that his Afro American Negro woman has for him. Why, if this black woman loved and respected this black man, it would be reflected in the art and literature that this Afro American Negro woman puts out here. If this black woman loved this black man in the same way this Afro American Negro loves this black woman, she wouldn't be putting on shows like Scandal. She wouldn't be writing books where she talks about being a white man's side piece. She wouldn't be writing books talking about how she wants to submit to a white man. She wouldn't be talking about how she loves white men. She wouldn't be writing books talking about swirling. She wouldn't be sitting here writing books talking about how she wants to have an illegitimate baby for a white man and then father that child with this black man. A clear sign of utter and complete disrespect towards this Afro American Negro. But this Afro American Negro will sit here and tell you that the black woman is God. When you can look at the fruits of this Afro American Negro woman that show you she is not only not God, but then worships and deifies this white man as her God. And she looks at this Afro American Negro pretty much and laughs at him because he's the only one who cannot see the joke being played on him. The rest of the world pretty much sees the joke that is being played on this Afro American Negro regarding this whole concept of the black woman being God. Because if this God loved this Negro so much, then why is this God making every effort to pretty much forsake him? Because that's what she's doing when she says she talks about swirling. She's saying, I'm getting ready to forsake this Negro. This Negro cannot meet my needs. He is nothing more than a pitiful child, and I'm tired of taking care of this pitiful child. I want a relationship with a man who I believe is my equal. And she wants to get off that pedestal that this Afro American Negro put her on and ascend to the level where she can be with her God. Because we look at this Afro American Negro woman's behavior, and it pretty much shows us how much she deifies this white man, not only in the way that she lusts after him, the way she pursues him, and the way she looks at him, but also in the way she adorns herself. Because if this Afro American Negro woman who was God loved herself so much, why is she desecrating her own image? I mean, if you were made in an image of a God, then why is this woman pretty much sewing a white woman's blonde hair into her head? Why is this black woman who says that she is made in the image of God or is God herself trying to cut off parts of her own nose to make herself look more like this white woman? Why is it that this Afro American Negro woman who says that she is a god and pretty much is made in the image of God, bleaching her skin to look more like a white woman? These questions that any critical thinker would ask go over the heads of this Afro American Negro, because this Afro American Negro, again, lives on his knees to submit to this Afro-American Negro woman who he believes is God. Meanwhile, God is trying to remake her image into the idea that he calls the devil. And that again pretty much is insane. How can God remake herself into the image of the devil that the Afro-American Negro calls the white man? Now the Negro will sit there and call the white man the devil, and he doesn't look at how his God is making efforts to not only pursue this white devil, but also to remake herself into the image of this white devil. And he sits there and he doesn't understand how these ideas pretty much contradict each other. How can God pursue a relationship with the devil when they are polar opposites of each other? One is good and the other is evil. How can both parties then come together to reconcile into a relationship? Again, I'm a screenwriter. I can't make up stuff that's insane, but this is perfectly logical to the Negro. God can have a relationship with the devil, and the universe will be all right with this. This makes absolutely no sense to anyone but the Afro-American Negro. He is the only one who thinks God and the devil can have a relationship together, and this universe would not collapse in on itself. But, this is the Afro-American Negro we're talking about. He makes about as much sense as a $3 bill. Everything that he comes out of his mouth pretty much is ridiculous. Again, he still sees the world from a childlike view because that's as far as he pretty much goes. I have always said that this Negro is stuck at a state of arrested development, and it pretty much shows in this whole statement that the black woman is God. And I listen to these guys who come up with these concepts, and they pretty much become even more ridiculous when I head over to the side of the street where these hotep Negroes, reside. These guys take this to another level with this whole black woman is God concept. Now these guys will sit there and say that this black woman is God, but they say it from the point of making a reference to the Egyptian gods. Now, as a writer of African American fantasy featuring the Egyptian gods, I did research on these Egyptian gods for 4 years before I published the first book in my series in 2002. And I read books like Your Legends of the Egyptian Gods, and in that book, it pretty much told me that Ra was the head of the pantheon of Heliopolis, which is the pantheon of the Egyptian gods, which was a patriarchal order. And underneath Ra was your Geb, who was the god of the ground, Nut, who was the god of the sky, and your Shu and your Tenafut. And pretty much most of the myths revolve around, the most important ones, revolve around Ra, the Geb, and the Nut, because they birthed Isis, Osiris, Horus, not Horus. I think it's Horus, but that's another Horus. But Isis, Osiris, Seth, Nephthys, and one of the Horuses, because it varies from region to region. And in that pantheon, it pretty much, there is no black woman as God. But these hotep Negroes will sit there and tell you that your black woman is God. When you go to the myths themselves, all of them that vary from city to city and even nation to nation, because Egypt and Nubia both worship the same gods and both of them all follow the same mythology, you see that even though the stories conflict, there's all one consistent thing. It was a patriarchal order. But your hotep Negroes will sit there and tell you that the black woman is God. I don't know where they get this from, but it makes absolutely no sense. I have seen numerous documents in my 4 or 5 years of research on these Egyptian gods, not a single thing talking about any sort of black woman as God concept in them. But these hotep Negroes will sit there and tell you that this is canon. And what even makes this more insane about their concept of the black woman being God, because they sit there and say, we need to uplift the black woman, we need to praise the black woman, we need to worship the black woman. But when you look at who this whole simp Negro gets involved with for a relationship, it's not the black woman. Every time you see one of these whole simp, I mean hotep Negroes, who does he have on his arm? That's right, he has a white woman on his arm. And what does that say to the world about your whole simp Negro? He says he loves, honors, praises, cherishes this black woman, but we look at who's on his arm is a white woman and he has biracial children. What happened to all the uplifting and praising of the black woman? What happened to all the support of the black woman? I don't see you supporting this black woman in any terms of your word, of your actions at all. No, I see you pursuing relationships with white women. I mean, I thought you loved God. And I thought you loved God so much, you wanted to have a relationship with him. Because that's what we Christians pretty much have. We try to have a relationship with the living God. We try to work with the living God and do what he tells us to do. But here we have this Negro who says he loves his God and says that this woman is the God that he lives to serve and love and praise. Yet here he is with a white woman. And his response to you confronting him on this subject is to say two things. He's going to say, you know, I, the black seed is the most strongest seed out here, and that black is dominant, which is pretty much, it partially is true, but it's ridiculous in and of itself. If you, again, love your God, you would want to have children by your God to continue to procreate yourself. And the other component is that you say that the white man is the devil. So why do you want the white man's woman? Oh, I forget. When he says that the white man is the devil and he hates the white man, he means the white man, not the white woman. And what makes that concept insane is this. Who was the one who taught the white man his culture? Who was his teacher who taught him the concepts of white supremacy and racism? And you wonder why I laugh at these hotep Negroes. And many of these Negroes were on their knees to this Afro-American Negro God. Because both groups pretty much have no idea what they are doing whatsoever. Most of these Negro groups look at this black woman as a god, they put her on a pedestal, and while they're looking up at her as they live on their knees, on her sofa, on in her bed, or in her apartment, leased in her name, she is looking up at that white man and looking for a partner who she believes will be able to meet her needs and be able to support her in the way that she believes will take care of her. And she looks at this Afro-American Negro more and more with more contempt, and he's sitting there thinking that this is the greatest woman in the world when he is stranded in one of the most miserable situations as a result of the leadership and authority of his black woman controlling his community for the last 45, 50 years and turning a once thriving population and a strong black community into a wasteland, pretty much being ravaged by interlopers and outsiders who pretty much have gained access all through her power and control over this black community. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe.